Thank you. The chair recognizes Mr. Ratcliffe for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Mr. Deputy Attorney General, good to see you.
Likewise.
I had a line of questions that I wanted to go into, but like many of the folks on this committee last night, I had a chance to see a number of these text messages between Agent Peter Strzok and Ms. Page. You've been asked about those. Have you had a chance to read them?
Not all of them, Congressman.
How many have you read?
A few dozen, I believe.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, I can't read some of these publicly. They're that obscene. They're that offensive. And as someone who served with you at the Department of Justice and reveres the independence of the Department of Justice, I will tell you that I changed my questioning to ask you about them because as I read them, I found them so sickening and heartbreaking that I felt compelled to do so. Now, in addition to being sickening and heartbreaking, these texts are also evidence. They're not evidence of an appearance of impropriety. They're evidence of an actual vitriolic bias, of actual prejudice, of actual hatred for the subject of the special counsel's investigation by folks serving as the independent investigators and lawyers on the special counsel itself. Mr. Deputy Attorney General, I guess, please tell me that when you read these texts, your heart fell and that you were appalled by what you read there.
I don't mean to quibble with you, Congressman. The special counsel investigation does not have any identified subjects, that is individuals, other than the persons who have already been charged. But I can tell you with regard to those text messages, we concluded when we learned about them that it was appropriate to complete the Inspector General's investigation. And if the Inspector General reaches the conclusion that it's misconduct, and obviously I have an opinion, as anybody may, about what it looks like, but it's important for me, since I supervise that investigation, to await the formal conclusion and then any recommendation before I reach an official decision and take any action.
Well, I guess when you line up Agent Strzok and Ms. Page, along with Bruce Orr and Aaron Zebley and Andrew Weissman and all the other conflicts of interest, I would tell you that, first of all, these aren't run-of-the-mill conflicts of interest. You mentioned Mr. Orr being a few doors down. He's your Assistant Deputy Attorney General. And, you know, employees of the department sometimes have spouses that are involved with corporations. But we're not talking about companies like Walmart or Microsoft here. We're talking about Fusion GPS, a company that had 10 employees. And his wife was one of them. And he was engaged in meetings with that.
Just want to clarify, if I may, Congressman, that although Mr. Orr was part of my office when I arrived, I never involved Mr. Orr in the Russia investigation, so he had no role assigned by me.
Well, I understand that, but I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, the conflict of interest here and the appearance of impropriety are, as everyone has said, colossally bad. But let's talk beyond that about judgment. You said in response to Mr. Gowdy's questioning that we should have great confidence in Mr. Mueller and in Director Wray and in yourself. And you pointed out that as soon as former Director Mueller found out about Mr. Strzok, for instance, that he took action. But I want to give him credit for removing or reassigning folks, but isn't he the one that chose them in the first place?
Congressman, Mr. Mueller was assigned by me to come in as special counsel, and there were a number of folks already working on the investigation. So I don't know to what extent Mr. Mueller, my goal was to get him in and working as quickly as possible. So I don't know what, if any, screening he did.
Well, do you know what anyone did with respect to vetting this team? Because, you know, if you set out to create an appearance of bias or prejudice or impropriety or conflict of interest, the only way you could do a better job of doing it would be to pick this team and then have them wear their "I'm with her" T-shirts to work every day.
I regret that you feel that way, Congressman, but as I said, I've talked with Director Mueller, and he understands the importance of avoiding any bias in that investigation.
Well, Deputy Attorney General, I have talked often about the fact that I think people can lose faith and trust in elected officials, but if they lose faith and trust in organizations like the FBI and the Department of Justice, to fairly investigate and adjudicate violations of the law, then we may lose the republic. I know that you take that charge seriously in the role where you are, but as has been said, events like these and the daily transgressions that become public one after another are not serving either the Department of Justice or the FBI well. I just encourage you to do everything you can to restore integrity to those organizations that I know that we have both revered.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I agree with you entirely, Congressman, and I want to assure you that when Attorney General Sessions talked with me about taking on this job, he conveyed to me his desire to make certain that we do everything we can to enhance public confidence in the rule of law and ensure that the Department of Justice runs appropriately. He, like you and me, served as a U.S. attorney. He had the privilege of serving for 12 years, and he was so proud to return because of the deep respect that Attorney General Sessions has for the department. I think that's reflected in the appointments that have been made to the department. Setting myself aside, we have a superb team of experienced professionals, including Chris Wray, who are in position to run that department. So I cannot assure you that there will be no wrongdoing. We have 115,000 employees. Things go wrong, but I can assure you that we will respond appropriately when they do.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Jayapal, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Deputy Attorney Rosenstein, thank you for your service to the country at this consequential time. We have spent 3 hours, and many of my colleagues on the other side have continued to harp on the theme of expressing concern with FBI agent Peter Strzok and the text messages that were just released yesterday. But I'd like to remind everyone of where we were just a little over a year ago. The FBI was conducting investigations of Hillary Clinton's emails, and leaks occurred routinely. Reports cited anti-Hillary Clinton bias within the FBI as the cause of leaks surrounding the investigation of Secretary Clinton's emails. One current agent even described the FBI as, quote, Trump land. Another agent said that some within the FBI viewed Secretary Clinton as, quote, the Antichrist, and said, quote, the reason why agents are leaking is that they're pro-Trump. Now, these leaks had serious consequences, and they arguably swung the election results in Trump's favor. And I didn't hear any of my colleagues on the other side expressing concern about the FBI's bias last year when this was happening, despite the very real problems we were seeing. I agree with you in your earlier statement that political affiliation is different from bias. I believe I'm quoting you correctly when you say that. And I want to remind my colleagues that people are allowed to have their personal opinions and their political affiliations. For instance, Special Counsel Mueller and former FBI Director James Comey and you are lifelong Republicans. But that is not what is at issue. As much as my colleagues on the other side would like to deflect attention away from the urgency of the special counsel's investigation into obstruction of justice and collusion at the highest levels of our government, it is clear to me after listening to 3 hours of questioning, none of this is about text messages. It is rather a full-fledged, irresponsible, and very dangerous attempt on the other side to attack and undermine Robert Mueller's investigation and his credibility, and to lay the groundwork for a desire to fire Robert Mueller or invalidate the results of his investigation, acts that I believe would cripple our democracy, and acts the likes of which we have not seen since Watergate. Let me just warn my Republican colleagues and the American people that history will not judge those acts kindly. And being dragged into a president's personal vendettas or apparent attempts to undermine the very fundamentals of our democracy is something we must resist. And so, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, let me just ask you again, in your role overseeing the FBI, is it your sense that the FBI's impartiality is at any risk?
It's important to distinguish the reputation of the FBI from the character of the FBI. The reputation obviously is damaged by every incident that comes to public attention, but the character of the FBI is a function of the approximately 37,000 employees. And as I said earlier, I've been very impressed with the character of the agents and employees who I know personally.
And do you believe that the FBI as an agency is politically motivated?
I don't believe you can characterize any agency, Congressman. We all recognize there can be individuals who did things they shouldn't do, but that's something that we address when it comes to our attention.
Deputy Attorney General, what can you do to protect the integrity of Special Counsel Mueller's investigation and the results that it comes out with?
Congresswoman, I don't think there's anything special that I need to do. Director Mueller has his mandate. He's conducting his investigation, and I believe he'll continue to conduct it until it's concluded.
And let me ask you one more time. You've said this a couple of times, but do you have full faith and confidence in Director Mueller's ability to conduct this investigation?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Let me move to election security. On November 15th, when the Attorney General appeared before this committee, I and several of my colleagues asked questions about the Justice Department's actions to ensure the security of our elections. And at the time, the Attorney General said that he had not yet ordered a review of what laws might need to be updated to protect our elections from foreign influence. Has such a review yet been ordered?
I can tell you, Congressman, we have a lot of ongoing work relating to protection of elections. We don't have enough time to go through it all now, but that is a very high priority for us. We have met with, as the Attorney General and I have met with Director Wray and some of his experts, and we're going to continue to do everything that we can to ensure that our elections...
Thank you, and we'd love to have an update on that. Let me use my last few seconds to ask you about civil rights. I have been very concerned that the DOJ is not actively defending civil rights and is instead dismantling critical structures and abandoning tools that for decades have been used by the Department of Justice to protect people from police brutality and discrimination. What is the status of the 18 open reform agreements, 5 open investigations, and 1 case in active litigation brought under Section 14141 that is managed by the Department's Civil Rights Division?
I regret I don't have personal knowledge of all of those, Congresswoman, but if I may, yesterday I attended the annual awards ceremony of the Civil Rights Division, and the Civil Rights Division has a lot of very talented and proud attorneys. The Attorney General spoke about his deep respect for the work of the Civil Rights Division, and so I'm confident that work will go on.
I would appreciate just a response to that later when you have a chance. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Chair